Hello, good day. Welcome to the Mind Your Own Business podcast. I'm your host, Sue Stiles, and today I'm going to be talking to, someone else who has a really awesome last name. Lots of times people will say they like my name. Well, today I'm talking to Tara McCool. I mean, the literal cool last name. Tara got her start behind the scenes on Good Morning America with MTV, found her way on the morning news at A Channel here in Calgary, Alberta. And right now she is co-hosting Calgary Next on CHQR with David Wallach. And I'll tell you why I'm talking to her today, because a couple months ago, I was speaking with Linda Olson. She's the news anchor on Global News here, well loved, well liked in Calgary. And we were talking about women of vision. And she used to host this and give awards. And she knows many, many wonderful women. And she said, Sue, do you know Tara yet? And so I reached out, had a short conversation. You are going to love listening to her and hearing her advice. Tara, what do we need to know about you to get the most out of our conversation today? Hi, podcast listeners. Welcome to Mind Your Own Business. I hope you enjoy the honest business advice and personal stories of mistakes and magic. I'm Sue Stiles, your host and business expert, and I am here to share hope and practical and proven tactics to build your business. Hey, all the steps to success and twice the grit. Visit me for business resources, advice, and offers at SueStiles.com. And now back to the show.
Hi, Sue. Well, thank you so much. And it's so nice of Linda, who is just an amazingly inspirational woman herself. So I appreciate that she connected the two of us. But, I think more than anything, filling the gaps, I'd say I'm a lifelong learner. I want to keep learning and growing and evolving as a human and as a parent and as a friend and as a colleague and as a leader. I think that's what life's all about.
So true. Good to say it out loud. Lifelong learning. Someone who thinks they know it all can't learn anything.
Yeah, that really puts them in that fixed mindset, right? Of I know everything. And how could you possibly know everything? So I feel like every single person you meet in life, no matter where they are and what stage they're at, can teach you something that you don't know.
And you're not afraid to fake it till you make it, let's say. You had quite a string of fortunate events that have led you on the road to where you're at. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, what does it take in somebody to say yes when maybe they don't have everything they think that they need?
Well, I think in my early days, when I was much younger, I didn't know any better. I just didn't. And so somebody would ask me if I wanted to do something and I'd say, all right. And really didn't have the understanding that, okay, you are completely not equipped for this job, but I'm going to try it anyway. I'm really grateful that I had that kind of mindset. I never really locked myself into feeling like I couldn't do something. I think my mom had a lot to do with that, where she was always just go be you, go do what you need to do. There were no strict parameters around, this is how your life is going to be. It's just, what do you want? Go get it. And so that's pretty much how my life has started and continues to go. So when I finished school, I ended up going into television and really never thought that I would be in television. But how did I get there? Well, because in my last year of school, I was in fashion merchandising in New York. And in my last year, I realized I'm getting a degree in this, but I don't think I want to do this for my life. And we had to do a mandatory co-op. So I looked around and I said, I want to go work for Good Morning America. So I had to go. It was an extensive interview process to intern at Good Morning America. And we did not have paid internships. When I went through that whole process, I really learned how much I loved the world of television. Never thought I'd be in front of the camera ever. I really loved the production piece, but that's really where I got my feet wet with that world. And of course, had no experience in it. And then when I moved back to Calgary, I noticed in the paper that the movie show, which was running at that time, this is going way back for those of you who might remember the show, it was running 1 day a week and they were expanding to 6 days a week. So I sent them a note and said, you probably need a production assistant. And it probably looked pretty good that I had Good Morning America and MTV from New York on my resume. Even though I didn't have a whole lot of experience, it looks good. And I got some good production behind the scenes experience. So, yeah, that's kind of where that whole world started.
A lot of business owners just jump in with both feet, even not thinking that maybe they shouldn't or do something. Do you have any advice, looking back and how you succeeded? What did you do to succeed? How can people, if they've taken off more than they can chew, is there something that you did that worked well for you and kept you in those positions?
Well, I think having the mindset that if something doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. It's really just a learning. So many of us prevent ourselves from moving forward just in case we fail or just in case it's not successful or what if. And I find that holds so many people back, that mindset. So yeah, it really helped me to get into that mindset of, well, if it doesn't work out, so what? I can go back to what I was doing or I take a different trajectory, but you have to be open to walking through the doors that open for you. There might be a reason why there's a door that's opening easily for you. Go check it out.
True. Let me ask, have you ever found yourself feeling like that imposter syndrome? Do you think it comes later in life, or have you heard about it? Have you heard about that thing?
Yes, I have. And actually, what I heard from Amy Cuddy, who's a psychologist, she wishes that it was called imposter experience, that it's something that people experience instead of it being a syndrome, and that everybody experiences it, everybody at every level. And I've certainly had moments where I've been in positions where I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? So I was working at Earl's Tin Palace and I was waiting tables, and somebody came over to me and said, hey, Larry Day's on the phone for you. Can he talk to you? So Larry Day was the producer of the movie show, which was an entertainment show that ran across the country. So I picked up the phone and he says, hey, is there any way you can go to Chicago tomorrow to interview Ben Kingsley and Lawrence Fishburne? And so
Wow.
I said, okay, sure. So, had I ever done any interviews before? No. Did I feel like, what the heck am I doing? No. But yes, sorry, but I certainly didn't have the experience to be going in and doing an interview. When I went in, I was open about that. And I said to Lawrence Fishburne, this is my very first interview ever. And it broke the ice. And I think that acknowledging and being open to being vulnerable, that you don't know everything, a lot of times will open you up to being more successful than pretending you know everything.
It really takes the air out of the balloon when you say that, that, so what if you fail? So what if you, are an imposter? Learn something from it. And I can just feel that in your voice as you go forward. It just takes the bubble out. Oh, well, you're not perfect and you don't know it all yet.
That's exactly right. Just think of all of the things that you could do if you were unstoppable. And you have to think about who that person is that's stopping you. It's your mind, right? So, your thoughts are not real. Your
You make
actions are real. There are certainly a lot of ways, and there's lots of information out there that helps people change their mindsets that way. But I really do think that it makes a big difference when you're willing to take risks and see how far you can really go with things.
Well, so you were going pretty far, building a resume, a portfolio, and lots of experience. And I think you were saying you could have had, continued on in that career if you would move out to Toronto, but you chose to stay home. Tell the listeners a bit about that, and let's talk about making those hard choices.
When I decided I was finished with things here, and for no reason other than it was just the right time for me to leave a morning show, I did have some opportunities in Toronto, and I feel like it could have taken me in a different trajectory with my career, my television career. But I would have been in the position where I was seeing my kids. I had 3 little kids at the time, maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a
Mm.
week, and traveling a lot and going back and forth. And I just thought that's just not, I didn't have kids for that reason. And I really felt like if something was going to happen for me here and I was meant to continue with that career here, then something would pop up, and it didn't. And I was okay with that. I really was okay. I had no regrets with that decision, and I still don't have any regrets with that decision. I was happy to be here with my kids.
Yeah. Would you say that came from your own internal values then?
Yes, I mean, typically when I have to make a big decision, I envision myself in that scenario. And so that's what I did. I envisioned myself getting home and having 2 days with my kids and then getting on a plane and leaving. All the things I was missing and all of those things. So yeah, I mean, at that time, that was more important to me than my career.
Yeah.
And so that's the decision that I had to make.
It's so important to listen to that feeling or that intuition. That I'm just remembering as you're saying that many years ago before I moved to Calgary, had a choice. I thought I might become a midwife. I used to be a childbirth educator and I
Oh,
loved that. And so I applied. UBC for the first time was offering the midwifery course. And I remember driving there and envisioning myself and my 4 children in Vancouver where I had grown up. I didn't like the feeling. I couldn't imagine it, and ended up coming to Calgary once and going, this is home for me. I've got to get back here. And things fell into place. But the challenge is before it happens, it's complete unknown. Do you have any kind of way to be comfortable in the discomfort of having to make big life choices like that?
for me, in my experience, I really need to be quiet with my decisions, and I need to write things down. And I need to really look at it and sit with it. And it usually, there's always one side that starts to really become evident for me. And then I have to listen to it. But I typically, like, even when I'm in a very quick scenario where somebody needs me to make a decision really quickly, I still need to take a moment and take a breath and just think, okay, you have to engage that, your executive thinking, because once you hit into that fight or flight mode, it really impedes your decision making. So that's why I think it's so important to like get back down, and maybe you need to go for a walk, or maybe you need to go for a run, or maybe you need to meditate, whatever it is that gets you grounded again. And then you really start to think about those two decisions and envision your life one way and another way, right? Or if it's a business decision, obviously you have to really be looking at some critical strategic thought around business decisions, but writing it out and really thinking about it. And maybe you need to talk to somebody about it, get another opinion. But I do think that you have to take a moment and breathe and make sure you're in a relatively calm state to make that decision.
And that sounds like really having compassion for yourself, which is a big word that you're using a lot now. And we'll get to sort of where Tara is now in her career. But the bridge there was that you did stay in Calgary and you worked in oil and gas. And you went from behind in the movie media industry to in front of camera, something completely different, into a corporate environment, and shifted that. What did you learn doing that?
Oh my gosh. Well, number one, it was a door that opened for me that I never, ever thought would happen. I would never have thought I would be in the oil industry. I had a friend who had been asking me for years, saying, you got to come into the oil industry. You'd be really great in the oil industry. And I just kept thinking, I don't want anything to do with that industry. Don't know anything about it. I feel like it'll be boring. Long story short, I ended up walking through the door and taking a job in communications with this oil company. And then I had to learn, right? It was a very steep learning curve. And I ended up staying there for 10 years. Why? Because I got to learn so much. I mean, I was internal communications, external communications, HR, community investment, as I was there, expanding my role and learning. And that's what I really loved about it. And it was a great community of people too, who I got to work with. So I learned that you can walk through a door that you're not sure about and realize that it's actually the right thing for you in hindsight. Sometimes you need to take a risk. Again, I could have walked through that door and said, oh my, this is completely awful. and then I could leave. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the door doesn't close behind you. You can open it back up.
Yeah. That's what doors are meant to do. Open.
Yeah, exactly. So I learned a lot. I learned about how different corporate life was than the media world. I had to learn a few lessons the hard way about how that whole works, but it was a great experience for me. I really did learn a lot, and
A
I appreciated
decade.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A decade of learning. And then at a certain point, you decided, I think I'm done here. And you put in your resignation just before the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I
The
mean,
timing
you
was
couldn't have known.
no, not at all. Yes, I decided it was time for me to leave. I'd been there for 10 years and I recognized that I really loved the HR and leadership component of what I was doing. And so I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew I wanted to do something that just focused on that. I left and decided I was going to give myself a little bit of time to figure that out. And I did. I took a lot longer than I had expected because of COVID and everybody had shut down and nobody was really looking at adding
Hmm.
expenses into especially consulting lines, all but dried up. So, people had different things to focus on and continue to have different things to focus on right now as we try to find our way out of this.
Yeah. And didn't that allow you and your family even to focus on different things? Like, was there a surprise in how family focused you ended up being, or did you?
Yeah, actually, in the beginning, this is for my family specifically. I recognize that there were a lot of people that went through heartbreak and terrible things during COVID. Thankfully, we were all healthy. I got some bonus time with my oldest daughter, who's away at Dalhousie University in her last year, but she stayed home with us for a while. All five of us, I've got three kids, so all five of us hung out in the house together, and I started cooking a lot more than I normally do. The kids were thrilled. They're like, "Whoa, this is a real dinner." Because I'm not much of a cook. And we played games and we did like apples to apples. I think we played ad nauseum, and 'cause that's my son's favorite game.
Aw.
So he's since moved on to crib. Now that's his new favorite. But we spent so much quality time together that there was definitely a silver lining in there for us where we spent some good time together that we wouldn't have been able to before. And my kids were staying home from school, obviously online. So, I mean, I was with them all day, all night, and I hadn't done that for years. So I saw that part of what we've been going through as a gift.
Yeah. What a silver lining. I've seen that for families as well. Even in the beginning, noticing there were dads biking with the kids on the paths and just
Right.
realizing, wow, I don't usually see that. And it changed a lot of family dynamic. But during this time, then, or had you already decided to become an entrepreneur? Because now you are running your own consulting firm, you grow leaders. How did that evolve?
Well, it took some time for sure for me to feel comfortable reaching out to anybody to talk about what I'm doing because everyone was so internally focused on what they needed to do in their company to get through this, right? It was two-way. For me, I thought this is the most important time for leaders to step up and the most important time for them to have support and guidance and somebody to talk to help them through this, but they were just so hyper focused on so many things that it didn't afford a great opportunity for that for me. It's been a really interesting transition for me. I've really loved being able to work one-on-one with people. I've loved the group coaching and being able to help people discover what self-awareness really means and how to move forward with compassionate leadership. And compassion is the biggest component of all of this for me. That's where my passion is right now is helping people that way. I do miss working with a team though, I have to say, because I'm a team of one for now. I will grow for sure, but right now I do really miss having a team to brainstorm with.
Most companies are missing team right now. So at least you're
Yeah.
not, misery loves company. You're certainly not alone in that. And I
Mhm.
find it interesting that you're focusing, sort of your niche is around being compassionate. And it makes me wonder, what have you seen or experienced in your decades of being out there, heard about, that has not been compassionate? Is there a problem with leadership, with, companies? What is the problem with people not being compassionate?
Well, I think that we see it at all levels with our government. I think we see it corporately. I think we see it on social media, that just how divided people are. And a lot of that has to do with a lack of compassion and not being able to take a moment to think about how somebody else might be feeling or why they have the opinion they do. And being able to have a conversation with somebody and fundamentally disagree with what they're saying, but take a moment to understand their perspective and why they might be feeling that way, and both walk away agreeing to disagree and still have respect for each other. I just don't see that happening. And I think that that's part of the problem that we have right now with engaging people and how divisive it is. And it goes the same for in corporations. So when I was working in HR and working with leaders, what I saw was just even the smallest shift in mindset around compassion and perspective made an enormous difference, like a huge difference for people. So they would come in and be very upset or really mad or angry or hurt. And so said this or did this or the actions. And then when you took a moment to really ask them to think about maybe where that other person was coming from, it changed the whole energy of the conversation, right? So then all of a sudden they're thinking, oh, well, I hadn't considered that maybe that's why they were feeling upset. Or maybe, there are a lot of reasons why people react the way that they do, right?
Mhm.
So just helping people get into a room with one another and ask the right questions to really get to the bottom of why they're disagreeing or why they can't seem to get along makes a huge difference. And leaders a lot of times are not aware of the things that they're saying or doing and how
Sure.
they're impacting the people who work for them, right? And it doesn't just end between work hours. So if somebody's really suffering at work because of their leader, they take it home. They take it in, with their kids. They take it with their wives. Their whole everything changes. Their energy shifts. And that's just so unnecessary. So that's really why I got into this, being able to talk to people about this and provide them with a different kind of perspective. And when people talk about compassion, that's soft and gushy and it's too nice. And how am I going to get anything done when everybody's being too nice? And that's such a misconception around compassion, because compassion is actually one of the most difficult ways to lead. That means that you're willing to hold people accountable. You're willing to have really tough conversations with them so that the rest of the team isn't suffering and so that they develop. You're willing to make really tough decisions after engaging everybody and acknowledging that maybe not everyone's going to agree. All of those are compassionate movements, right? And I find the fear-based movements are the ones that they just pretend everything's fine and don't talk about it or don't want to hurt people's feelings, or, that's just ignoring and putting your head in the sand, and nobody gets ahead that way.
So if someone is having a conflict with a boss, a coworker, a spouse, this could be in any situation. Is there a special technique that they can use that you advise? Or is it as simple as stopping and asking yourself, let me put myself in their shoes and imagine where their side is coming from?
Yeah. And you're talking about empathy, right? When you really are looking to understand how that person is feeling and putting yourself in their shoes. The compassion part is when you actually take action to alleviate that suffering somehow. So yeah, let's just put it into play, right? Let's say that you're witnessing somebody being really rude or abrasive in a meeting. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is really taken on a life of its own. Everybody's suffering. This person doesn't even realize how they're impacting others. And then you have a meeting with them. And one strategy is to find out what their objective was. What was your objective in that meeting? What was your objective in saying it that way.
Hmm.
And then, you just ask the questions so that you can understand. And it's really important to ask those questions without judgment.
Right.
Right. So you go into the conversation. Number one, I should have started really with you have to be in the right headspace so that you are calm and you're non-judgmental. No matter how you were feeling before, you need to go into this conversation thinking, I'm going to ask the questions to find out why that happened, why that was said, why they did that.
Mm-hmm.
And not in an accusatory way, but just, I really want to understand how that happened. And then if it was offside, then you address it and you're blunt about it. That can't happen. Here's how it impacted the rest of your team.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how it impacts me. And here's actually how it impacts you and your credibility. If you're somebody who goes through 15 years at work and you're known as the jerk and nobody's ever told you that nobody wants to work with you because you're abrasive, then, who's doing you any favors here? A leader is somebody who actually takes action and says, I want to help you understand how you're impacting your own credibility and the team.
Yeah. So if we can get to understand what compassion is better, we can see that shift from just, no, it's not being nice and being a yes person. It's actually getting to the honesty and the truth behind it, and then taking the correct action.
Yeah, for their best interest, right? So that's exactly what it is. So the compassionate piece is really just, number one, you have to notice that something's off. You have to be in it enough to notice something's off. And then you're going to take action and go, okay. And the action might also be, now's not the right time to say something because they're going through something. But you have to dig in to understand it. And also recognizing not everybody receives compassion the same way.
Of
And
course.
you don't know how people are going to react. And, that's also, you have to prep for those kinds of things too. If it's going to be a tough conversation, you have no idea how that person's going to receive it. You have no idea how they'll react. So you have to make sure that you stay calm throughout the entire conversation.
Well, how great to have somebody like you come alongside and help navigate those conversations and those situations. And you yourself, so now you're becoming a service provider. You have your own company and you're providing these services. You are reinventing yourself again, maybe going into your third decade now. What are some of the actions you've had to do? So, in the beginning, maybe you're just responding and learning. Now you're being very proactive with your career and your future, saying, this is what I want. How does one go from being corporate and employed to I'm going to be the leader of myself and my own business? Have you gone through certain steps that others also would want to consider when they're starting their own businesses?
This has been, I must say, a tough transition for me. When I was on my own during the pandemic, it was hard for me not to be in the middle of all of that action. Because I was so used to being on the communications and the HR side and digging in and knowing all the facts. And then how are we going to communicate it to everybody? And how are we going to help? And I felt really weird not having any community like that to take care of or help. I probably did that with my family. I may have been doing that with my family, but it was a tough transition for me not to work with people. I've always loved that, working with people. And so I found that, I would be with my pictures or with my website, with my content, I would want to brainstorm with people about it. And I didn't have anybody. So I went to some friends, but they have full-time jobs too. I felt bad asking them for help, and they were gracious and wonderful to help me. But I found that the most important thing for me to do was to really schedule my time. And have things built into a schedule for myself. And also to not be scared to hire people to do the things that aren't valuable to you for your time. So there were all sorts of things that I could have learned how to do with my website, that I could have learned how to do with different things. But instead, I decided that I would invest in having somebody help me do those things, because it would have taken me months longer
Yeah. Good
to
for
learn it
you.
and
Yeah.
understand it. And so I do feel like if you're going out on your own, identify the things that you can't hire somebody out to do everything in the beginning for sure. But for those things that you know are going to be real time suck for you and you could be spending them on other things growing your business, then hire that stuff out. And make sure you have a good oversight with it and understand where you want to go with it. But those are easy things to hire out.
Yeah. Great advice. Looking back in hindsight over everything, do you have anything else that you could share out of the heart of Tara McCool for the rest of the listeners here for them to take on their day and maybe do something about?
I'd say there are a couple things. Number one, I'd say just go for it. Just
Mhm.
do it. If you have had something in the back of your mind that you're passionate about, or you keep thinking, I'd love to do this, I'd love to do that, do it. Go do it. Time is ticking away, right? You got one life. So walk through the door, open the door up yourself if you have to, and walk through it. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
You can go back to what you were doing before or start it while you're in a full-time job. I'd say that. And I would also say every day, try to think of being compassionate in one way or another towards someone and have that as an everyday. I'm going to be compassionate and I'm going to make a change somehow. I'm going to make somebody feel really good today. I'm going to de-escalate a situation for a friend, whatever it might be. And it could be something small, but be compassionate towards someone else who really might need it. And it might be a game changer for them.
That's a great piece of advice. I think we could all look back and think of people who've made a difference in our lives. Sometimes it just takes one person to say one thing or do one thing a little bit different. We can all be a difference maker in someone else's life too.
You're absolutely right. You just truly, you hear it all the time and it's cliche that you don't know what other people are going through, but it's so, so, so true. So that coworker who you're having an issue with or a leader who you're having an issue with, you have no idea what they're dealing with, either at work or in their private lives. Try to have a little bit of compassion. And then that also eases your own energy too. Right? It helps you de-escalate and have a better energy yourself so that you're not impacting yourself and bringing yourself down.
Good advice, good information. Great to get to know you better. Tara, if our listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you?
You can go onto my website, taramccool.com. I'm also active on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, Tara McCool Coaching. So whichever platform you're comfortable with, you can go check it out and give me a call if you want to have a little chat about how I might be able to help you.
Take her up on that. Go and find her and give her a call. Great insights. And thank you so much for being on Mind Your Business today. That's it for today, listeners. I hope you took something away. And thank you, Tara, again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Bye for now. Please follow and review if you enjoy these podcasts. And then visit me at SueStyles.com.